Let's get to why we're all here. We are here because we are going to learn about sports psych, and I'm going to put my glasses on because I need to. Okay, our guest today is a doctoral psychology, doctorate of psychology student, probably. Let me see if I'm saying that right. In clinical psychology at the University of Denver. He has a master's in sport and performance psychology from the University of Denver's Graduate School of Professional Psychology. This is all sounding very good. He's a certified mental performance consultant with the Association for Applied Sports Psychology, and his specialty is working with the third team in all sports, but especially our sport, because in addition to having all these great skills and all this educational background, our guest is a level 3 USA field hockey umpire and has been since, he's been umpiring since 2004. And let me make sure, I think we're ready to go, and I am ready to welcome our guest, Whit Ryan. Yeah, wait. I hope you can hear all that crowd noise, because that definitely isn't simulated.
That may be the most applause I've ever gotten.
Trust. I do it just on, on the regular, just to make me feel better about my life. It just, oh yeah, here. Right? Like, don't you just feel good? Don't you just, feel good? Welcome, Whit. Thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm great.
You're great?
I'm great. Other than having my game canceled, not due to COVID, but because of snow.
Yeah. Yeah, well, not surprisingly, given where, you live and I live, and this is a thing. We're still, we still got a week or so to go to April, and we're going to have snow. That's the thing that's going to happen. Yeah. So there you go. But disappointing. But I'm glad you guys are able to get back on the pitch. What's happening sort of in your area with COVID right now? Tell me about that.
Well, we have seen a downtick in COVID. We're also seeing everybody over 70 is eligible for vaccines. I've been vaccinated because I work in mental health. So locally we're seeing a downtick. The U.S. is, I think everybody in the world has seen just how well the U.S. has handled COVID. I'm not going to get into that.
Don't be too hard on yourselves. Canada has really struggled in a lot of ways too. And we have a lot of UK friends on this stream. So none of them are looking at you and if, from a high place of authority here. We all know how hard it is and how politics is getting in the way of the best health decisions that we've got. So don't beat yourself up, and it's not your fault.
Oh, I'm not. I have plenty of other things to beat myself up about. But sport-wise, we're seeing some sport come back, outdoors, real low attendance numbers, masks on the sidelines, things like that. So,
right.
It's slowly coming back.
So are seniors able to play right now, or is it just juniors, or just training, or what's happening?
I think the seniors are playing. There's not a lot. I can't say exactly what's going on with U.S. field hockey training at the moment, but we're seeing here in the U.S. the college teams are definitely having a spring season, which is even more interrupted by weather than our fall seasons.
So they shifted. They shifted the fall season into the spring.
Yeah, not all conferences, but most conferences moved to the spring. So there's some college hockey, but it's a very abbreviated season. So it's happening, but it's happening slowly, and there's a lot of postponement of games due to COVID. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Simon Dye is curious, which part of the U.S. you're from?
I live in Denver, Colorado, so at the foot of the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah. Not a huge hockey hotbed, is it?
No, it really
kind of like Calgary?
We have no, not even kind of like Calgary. We have, I think, 17 high school teams, and that's it.
Yeah.
But the closest college hockey is a couple hundred miles away, and we have some club hockey, but it's not. When I say club hockey, it's not the same as club systems around the world.
Right. Right. Yeah. We all have that experience. It's we all look on Europe and the UK as, with a lot of envy because of the way that they're able to have those, clubhouses and big rivalries and hockey every weekend and all that kind of stuff. But hey, someday. Simon's just chipping in. My niece is at Mississippi College and has been playing footy for a few weeks.
Yep.
I
There's
don't know why
little
she's,
pockets everywhere.
yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Indeed.
It's
I'll never
nice.
do that again. Apologize.
There you go. So, so you're in Denver now, but how did you get your
Yeah.
start in hockey? Like, where did that come from? And, were you in a different area of the States when you started? Tell me everything.
Yeah.
Tell me everything.
Before we get into that, I just want to congratulate you on your appointment.
Oh, thank you.
I know how hard you've worked for this. I know how excited you've been. I also know how hard it has been for you to keep it under wraps. So,
Because I've done a very bad job of it.
well, I didn't say that. But, I genuinely think not only is this fantastic for you, I think having somebody so well versed in third team engaging with players on a day-to-day basis can do nothing but good
Yeah.
for the sport.
Yeah. I
For
sure
the
hope so.
and not just for the players, but also for the umpires. Hopefully, as you said, it doesn't have to be an adversarial relationship. There are going to be moments when you're not going to be happy with each other, and that's great.
Yeah.
But to understand that we're all on the same side,
Yeah.
the side of good hockey.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I'm
Thank you so much.
so
That's very
excited for
sweet.
you. Yeah.
And I know it has been done before. I think I mentioned it weeks and weeks ago on a show that Nathan Stagno, who I've talked about several times on the broadcast because he's fascinating and he's worthy of discussion, but he's from Gibraltar, Olympic level umpire, retired now, and he showed up. I remember seeing him in the TMS in the FIH database, showing up as a manager for the Gibraltar senior men's team at a European competition. So whether it was like a Div 3 or Div 2 or something like that, I wasn't really sure. I don't remember now. But I remember seeing that years ago and thinking, huh? Stagno? What? And it didn't even clue into me at that point that that could be a really beneficial thing. So if anybody out there has heard of anybody else, retired FH umpires doing this kind of role for a national squad, I'd be super interested because I want to call them up and find out what I should do. I need help. So I'm looking for advice. But there you go. Anyway, thanks so much, Whit. I really appreciate that. Now let's get into your background because I think it's always interesting to find out how do people in smaller hockey centers have gotten into the game.
Well, my getting into the game, I grew up in Ohio, and Ohio is one of the places where there is quite a bit of hockey.
Yep.
And none of the people who I was hanging out with in high school, I went to a college prep school, and none of the girls wanted to wear the stinky goalie gear, and I didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
So, like a lot of people, that's how I got into the sport was nobody wanted to do what I found that I not only really loved, I was quite good at. My personal journey got really complicated late in high school here, and I was unable to join the national team. Wound up actually playing in Scotland for quite a while. I lived with
really?
family.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever talked about that.
No, we haven't.
Well,
Where
now
in
you know
Scotland were
something
you
new
playing?
about me. Just outside of Edinburgh, in a
Oh, okay.
little place called Clyde.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and played some really great hockey there. But eventually, the Scottish folks said you either have to marry someone here, become a citizen, or go home. So
Rude.
I came back to the. I know. I came back to the U.S. And again, personal stuff, some medical stuff, and deeply personal stuff that
Yep.
probably isn't appropriate for here. Intervened in my ability to play on the men's national team, and so while I continued to play, I coached some. Ultimately, I started umpiring in the way that I think a lot of us start umpiring. There was nobody to blow the whistle.
Right.
And somebody because I was a goalie, you were either playing or you were out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was rotating with another goalkeeper, and somebody just handed me a whistle and said, "You can't be as bad as nobody." Turns out you can. You can be worse than nobody.
Oh my gosh. From faint praise to zero praise. Oh my goodness.
So, and I don't know if you know this about me, Keely, but I really don't like not being good at things. So I know.
Tell me more about this phenomena that I've never heard about in an umpire.
I hated not knowing. I hated being wrong. I hated feeling out of my depth. And so I sort of just dove in and started umpiring. I think 2004 is when I probably did my first official kinds of officiating.
Yeah.
But I've been doing it for longer than that. And then just worked my way up. Unfortunately, given my age, I wasn't able to qualify for the FIH panel kind of stuff. And then I suffered a really gnarly traumatic brain injury. Don't hit your head, kids. It's not a good plan. In 2011.
Right.
And decided that as much as I loved playing, I couldn't continue at the level that was 2000. I had two traumatic brain injuries, one in 2011, one in 2016. And I had just started my master's program in 2016 and decided that was spending that much time and energy and effort getting a master's degree and then a doctorate and being a goalkeeper didn't make sense. So I did retire officially from playing then. And now I umpire and I do sports psych with umpires and referees and officials across sport.
Yeah.
With a lot of ice hockey and a lot of rugby.
Oh, interesting. Gideon was just chiming in. This is a great tie-in. God, you're good at this. Gideon, just a professor, saying the home nation's rugby teams routinely get referees involved in training a lot. Not that it's helping with their discipline, but yeah, I mean, rugby is one of those sports that I think we all look to and say, "Oh, look at that discipline and how well they're treated and how articulate and expressive those referees are and that sort of thing." So that must be a really great sport to be involved with. But I just want to pick up because as soon as you said you were a goalkeeper, boom, a whole bunch of the third teamers chimed in. Oh, here's another ex-goalkeeper. Neil's saying, I'm also a goalkeeper. Rachel, I also had a period in goal. What do you think from your experience? Why do goalkeepers turn into amazing umpires? And why do they get so good? Why do they gravitate to it so much? Is it because they're used to being alone?
We're weird to begin with. I think genuinely there is a certain personality. There's certain tendencies to be willing to be sort of the focus of a lot of attention at the same time as being the goat on both ends, the greatest of all time in one moment and the scapegoat for everything that's wrong in another moment. And there's a very there's a common experience between umpires and goalkeepers of that feeling. We're used to being alone. We're used to making a lot of decisions. And as any goalie will tell you, we stand there and we watch. A good high-level goalkeeper is going to be able to break down the play and anticipate 3, 4, 5 moves ahead, which translates very nicely to umpiring in that, however you look at it, I'm trying to move to the next point of conflict, or I'm trying to anticipate what's happening while I'm watching the ball here. My attention, I'm already leading into what we're talking about, but my attention also, then I see something over here that is giving me the little spidey sense of like, what's going on over there? So, I think it's not uncommon. And I think there's also just the nature of goalkeeping in and of itself. You're either in or you're out. Yep. Whereas there's a lot of substitutions for the rest of the players. As goalkeepers, we're either in goal or we're standing on the sidelines. And most of us don't like standing on the sidelines.
Right.
So
and
I want to do something else.
Yeah, you build those mental skills to stay in the game. Vanessa Williams is saying hi to both of
Oh,
us. Nice of
hey,
her to
Vanessa.
stop
Another one of
in.
my emotional support Canadians.
Emotional support Canadians. That is literally the funniest thing I've ever seen you say on Facebook. I was like, oh, I feel like I have a job. Like, should I get a fluorescent vest? Like when I'm, doing my duty? And
Yes.
emotional support Canadians. And
With
yeah.
cookies and flasks.
And Niels is agreeing here. Thinks that your insight in the game comes from being back there. Ian saying we watch the game for a lot of the time. So, yeah, I think that's a big
And we're
part of it.
always right.
Well, yes, which helps you become a great umpire, obviously. So that must lead really nicely into why you got into sports psychology. What really drew you into it, and how did you incorporate everything that you learned in goalkeeping and umpiring into your studies? And how has that affected you now? Sorry, is that a big enough question? I don't know. Should we just sit back for 45 minutes? Sorry. Just pick out one concept.
I didn't know that sports psych was a thing until I was coaching on the West Coast and encountered a fantastic sports psychologist working with the team. And I was sort of mid-transition career-wise, and trying to find something, honestly, that was going to carry me through retirement. I was a professional chef for quite a while, and I was realizing that between cooking and umpiring, my body was my only source of income. And when you've played in goal for 35 years, your body starts telling you this is not a good thing to rely on.
Right.
So I knew that I wanted to go into therapy of some sort, and sports psychology really put the pieces together for me in terms of wanting to work with elite athletes, with performers. My undergraduate degree is in technical theater. So I've sort of done a lot of things, and it all comes together in performance. How do we as humans perform at our best when we need to be there?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, you have to spend a moment on technical theater. I need to find out what this means. Like, I'm thinking emotional theater, or what is the alternative to technical theater? But anyway, tell me, what is technical theater?
I was a stage manager and a props designer.
Okay.
So the actual tech of theater, not a performer.
Not a performer. I can see you on stage, Whit.
No,
yeah. No, I cannot. Okay. All right. Zero bid. I hear you. Okay. So, lots of people chiming in the comments about, managing players from the back and all that kind of stuff. So
exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, I can't remember. I think I was listening to a podcast and Brendan Creed and Phil Roper were on, and Brendan was talking about how being a left back, it was players from Wales, but being left back gave them this immediate connection to the umpire because they tended to spend a lot of time in the same area and they were always talking to them and having these sort of conversations. I was a left back. So that's probably why I watched what they were doing and I was able to notice when they weren't watching me, and then I would do my little devious deeds over there. But anyway, let's not talk.
As you know, my best friend of 20 some odd years now is also a left back. So Garrett Best was my defender for many, many years. So.
Yes, he is. Also an umpire.
Also an umpire.
Which is fantastic. Okay. Well, let's get into the meat and potatoes of why we're here. And you wanted to bring to us and the Umpire at Home audience talking about the power of our brains. So why don't you set up what we're going to start talking about, and I'll dial in the presentation with all my gifted skills here. Look at that. Just like that. We're there.
It's amazing. So One of the things that I was thinking about, and we've been talking about this for over a year now, but really in this COVID year, has been how do we bring our best to any match? Oh, hey, Craig. How do we bring our best to any match, no matter the day, no matter the time? And I really wanted to pull out a few of the key techniques, my go-tos, if you will, in terms of really easily accessible ways of approaching a match, pre-match, during the match, post-match, that can kind of help all of us be where we need to be. And that's what this presentation is. I know y'all don't have a lot of presenters presenting with PowerPoints or whatever, but there's some visuals here that I think are going to help in terms of what we're talking about. Plus, we get to use some cool videos. So, yeah, that's the thing that I'm really wanting to talk about. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're just going to cruise through here, and I know, Keely, you're going to be watching the chat, and if there's questions, we can bring them up. I may not be able to answer them, but
absolutely.
I'll give it a good shot.
Yeah, and I am going to reinforce that because I want, I know that the people who tune in week after week, they know that this is a very interactive experience, and I love the questions because this is how we really tease out the substance of our subjects, and it helps us learn more about what we're actually teaching, I find anyway. And I really like that. So I encourage you at any point, just throw in a question and I'll stop Whit at a good time, and I'll be asking my own questions because I have a lot of questions about this material. I'm really, really excited about this. So please don't be shy at home. And yeah, we can get into it. Harmut is saying hello, so good to see you as always, Harmut. So go ahead, let's talk about how much of umpiring is mental.
So this is how I start most of my workshops and presentations with umpires and referees. I want you to think of a number. What percentage of the umpiring that you do or that is done is mental work? Just put a number in the back of your head, and we can move on from this slide.
Okay. So I'm not just to blurt out my answer out loud.
Don't blurt out your number.
Okay.
And look at this.
Do you want me to show this
now?
Yes,
please.
Okay. Oh, that's not how we do it. There.
That's really good.
Hey, I like this tune.
Catchy theme song.
How aware are you of the clock at this time?
Aware.
Is it like seconds? Yeah, pretty. Yeah.
I know purely because I just try and almost segment the time. So like, okay, next 2 minutes, nice and sharp. Okay, next 2 minutes, and by that point in the game, you're tired. You're physically tired, you're mentally tired. So using any techniques that are going to keep you fresh. So I just try and segment the time. Plus, again, we help each other out. I couldn't always see the clock because of the glare from the sun. So Lorraine's like, right, last 2 minutes, come on, let's keep it tight. Or, last minute, especially when there's, the potential for the hooter to go in the middle of the penalty corner. So that's a good time to manage it and say to the girls, look, the hooter's going to go in the middle of this. Just keep playing. Just keep playing.
All right.
Because
awesome.
some of them will just stop. In the next minute, the ball's in the back of the net, and they're looking at you, and you're like, you've got to keep playing. So that can be quite a good
right arrow should do it.
Situation.
Yeah. Oh, that's very good.
There we go. All right. So I saw a couple of numbers pop up: 80s, 90s, 50s, 100s. Thank you, Meg. Hey, Meg. How's Aaron? So then I asked the next question. How much time do you devote to training your mental skills relative to your physical and tactical training? And none of the, nobody has to confess those numbers, but if they're not the same, what's going on there? If you're saying 100% or 80% of umpiring is mental, and you're devoting 80% of your training time to physical training, what's being lost? Where are you losing time to train skills? And I'm not saying don't train your physical skills, don't train your tactical skills, but make sure that you're working in mental skills. And I'm just going to hit a couple of those so we can pop through the next slide. I'm just going to pop through some of my go-to training techniques as we go through.
Okay.
Yep. So I'm going to talk a little bit about attention and focus. One of the things that we talk about in sports psychology is this notion of gating. And when we talk about gating, what we mean is, as an umpire, do you have a very wide view or a very narrow view? Are you gating out information? Or are you gating in too much, right? And I'm seeing that exactly. Less than the other two, not enough. And I think this is someplace where, interestingly, yes, these sessions qualify. Playing Candy Crush on your phone, not so much.
No,
sorry,
but that's interesting, and that's the first thing that popped into my head because of all the things that we do with FH umpires, and that all of the clips and the discussions and the watch parties that we do and things like that. And I didn't want to jump ahead in the presentation or anything like that, but I'm sure a lot of other people are thinking, does this qualify as mental training and that sort of thing? And I guess when you're looking up like that, I'm thinking you're like, maybe, but you have a different sort of, you're going to take us through a different a focus, no pun intended.
Yes.
But different issues that maybe are the things that we're not doing as much.
Yeah. And I think this is something that I want to point out, is that we have a lot of players, athletes, who are now participating in mental skills training. The growth of sports psychology has been exponential in the past 10 to 15 years. And so you're seeing a lot of athletes getting out ahead of us. When you see teams training with the special forces, training with the Navy SEALs, training with, they're not just doing the physical training, they're also doing mental skills training. When you have sports psychologists on staff with different Olympic programs, New Zealand Olympics, I know the All Blacks have some fantastic sports psychologists. There's almost every nation competing has some level of sports psychology. Officials and referees are sort of missing the boat a little bit. So, that's where I think that skills working on. So I'm going to be talking about these skills. Listening to me talk isn't the same as training. It's like watching someone work out versus working out. We will get into some mirror neurons, and we'll talk about the value of visualization a little bit later. So,
okay, good.
We're going to talk about.
Even I noticed that last week when I was with at the selection camp, is that our squad sports psych was on site. She was there for 5 of the days of the camp. And you think, well, it's just a selection camp. Why did that person need to be there? But part of the training that the entire squad did was some attention exercises, some emotion. What did she call it? It was not deregulation, but how to key down
emotional
your
regulation.
Yes, I think it was that.
Arousal regulation is probably where she was at.
Yeah, and so I found that really interesting. And again, something that, man, wouldn't it be neat to have something like that we do as a group at tournaments, at, league events and things like that, so that we as a group can be working on those skills in a centralized way. But
for
there
sure.
you go.
All right, so we're going to talk about gating in and gating out. And when we talk about focus, you can have too little focus in the tunnel vision, narrowing down. And this is going to be a surprise to me, because I know I asked you to pull some clips. I haven't actually watched them. I just made sure that they were in here.
That was
I know.
That was part of your job.
Opening it up on the right-hand side for Nagai. It was a great ball across the field. It's just bought them so much space now to run into. Kawamura just outside.
Sorry.
She blew the whistle when really Japan had the ball.
Yeah, just blew that too early. Great opportunity for Japan. They don't come that often in a game like this. You don't want the umpire to be blowing you up when she could have maybe just held her whistle a moment longer.
I'll skip the slow-mo part of that,
Yeah.
but I pulled out what I think is a classic example of that, which is an advantage situation. So what do you think? Did I do a good job of finding a situation where we tend to get too narrow?
You did a great job.
Thanks.
I would challenge any umpire to say that there wasn't a moment where you wish you could just swallow your whistle. That moment where you blow it and you're like, oh, not only did I blow it, I blew it. And she did a fantastic job of just saying, sorry, on me. And that's the proper way to handle it. But the question then is, had she been able to take that little mental step back, and it's probably both a physical step and a mental step. I'm not going to talk from an umpire manager perspective or anything like that, because Lord knows I do not have the skill to be an umpire manager at that level. So I don't know what an UM would say, but from a sports psychologist perspective, what I would say is it looked like her vision was narrowed down. All she saw was stick foul, stick foul, stick foul, and maybe a foot. I don't know what all else might have happened in there. But in that moment, if she'd had a little bit more information coming in, right, she might have been able to then assess that hold. Just that extra beat of wait. And I don't, if we were working together, she and I, we would be able to look at that and have a conversation about what was in your head in that moment.
Right.
But that's such a classic example of narrow focus.
Okay. I want to go back to something you said, because I want you to tell me more about it. You said the umpire maybe needed to both step back physically and step back mentally. Can you describe more of that to me? Because as an umpire manager, I can certainly I can make the link between an umpire's position and say, you got so close to the play that your focus was narrowed. And I do talk about that quite a bit. But what's the difference between that and stepping back mentally?
A lot and nothing at all. The difference is that if we are unable, so let me take this from a different perspective. What I would say to her in this moment, let's imagine she said, I was just really caught up in the action.
Okay.
Then to step back would be to allow yourself an extra breath, or a pause, a thought, a moment where you buy yourself that space, the mental space. Just like we buy ourselves this physical space to get ahead of the play, you buy yourself the mental space of being clear in your head. And I bet in that moment, she probably had a whole lot of noise. And so what we do is we train the quiet.
Okay.
And this is one of those things that you train. You get yourself into a place where there's low stakes, but there's lots of noise. Maybe you put your headset on and you're watching a game and you're running, and then you have to do a bunch of math problems. And you train how to quiet the noise so that when those moments happen, you already have the pathways to quiet the noise.
Right.
So
right.
It does that make sense?
Absolutely. Ali Keogh talked about this when she was on Umpire at Home, and she talked about blocking out the crowd noise. And I think Celine did the same thing when she was talking about her experience in indoor, which is even louder. And Lee Barron said it too. And it's obviously a skill that they've been able to cultivate, because I don't think it just comes naturally. I don't think you don't spring out of the womb with a whistle in your hand and the ability to ignore crowd noise or player noise or coach noise or plane noise going overhead, but you practice at it. And if you can simulate the circumstances like you were just describing, like the idea of watching a game, but having something else going on in your head, like maybe you're playing a podcast or something, like would that be kind of the cognitive load that you want to create for yourself, that you have to screen out?
I think in some ways, when we talk about tunnel vision, you almost have to physically pull yourself back a little bit. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk when we get to sort of the refocus part, the reset part of the presentation, like that moment where you pull yourself back physically can also be a mental pullback. Mm-hmm. Right? You connect those two things.
Okay.
And yeah.
So is it like a psychosomatic like connection? Like you're sending the signals to your brain by stepping back, that your brain goes, oh, I'm stepping back, and it's on another level, if I'm understanding that right? Okay, cool.
Yeah, exactly. One of my mentors in sports psychology, Alex Cohen, was working with me when I was getting feedback from some UMs that I was getting tense in the last 2 minutes of a game. And my whistle tone was too fast. Right. And I was letting the tension of the match push my tension up.
Right.
And I worked with Alex and learned, I set myself a cue word, and I trained that I pay attention to my shoulders. Mm-hmm. And if my shoulders get tense, I know that I'm getting tense. And it used to be I'd wait till they were up here, and I'd be making calls like this. And now I just notice a little bit of tension in my shoulders, and I'm able to dial it back.
Absolutely.
So that's the kind of training.
Yeah.
So that we just went too little in terms of tunnel vision. I think that you have a clip on too much.
Absolutely.
Nobody loves drinking from the fire hose more than grad students. Oh, just
Sharky. She hits it low, looking for the deflection. It's gone out though, and it will be a 16. I think that they'd got a long corner. Ireland have taken it quickly, played it forward. There's two players forward. It's 2-on-1 if the ball could be released. It is released wide now. Chance for Duke to get a second. Duke shoots. It's dribbled in. It's gone off the mitt of Briggs and into the goal. Ireland now have a 3-1 lead. Talks to his players. Here's the penalty corner. Mel, I'll let you take it up from here.
It's Sharky here. Oh my word. Oh. I mean, Sharky's absolutely smashed the ball in. There's not even an American player anywhere near that Irish stick. I think it's Katie Mullen's stick, so it's 100% a long corner for the US. They're a man down anyway at this particular moment in time, so they probably had one less defender back there because they committed forward.
There you go. So again, just so everybody knows, and everybody at home understands that when I present clips that we're discussing in a constructive way, that this is never a criticism of the umpire in the situation. And you've seen over and over again when the umpires come on, they are so accepting and open to talking about the things, you know, they're the ones who are often saying, Keely, you got to clip this thing so I can talk about it because I screwed it up. And so this isn't for criticism, but it is an example. I thought maybe, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, of maybe an umpire looking too narrowly, getting so much information that the very discreet call that they needed to make, they weren't able to nail it bang on. What do you think?
I think you're probably right. I mean, we would only know again if we talked to her. And yeah, I want to reiterate. I asked you to pull clips. I have clips that I wish we could watch, but we can't because of legality.
Yeah. Copyright's always a thing.
Yeah, right. That's a thing. Never is this to criticize a call. Every single one of us has probably missed that call, that touch. There are I mean, that was a high pressure situation, a ton of information coming in. But yes, I think that it is highly likely that in that moment you're looking at the path of the first runner, you're looking at the positioning of defenders, you're looking at the height of the ball, you're looking at the pace of the ball, you're looking at the type of the strike, you're looking at so much. A penalty corner is such an opportunity for so much strategic play. You know, those set plays are such an opportunity to have a setup for the offense, and the defense is forced to react. And so it is one of those opportunities where and the rules are different, right? It's one of the few moments in a game where the rules are different.
Yeah.
And for great reason. But you go 40 minutes with one set of rules and 20 minutes with another, or however many minutes of corner play you have in a game.
Yeah.
The rules are different. So yeah, it's a lot to take in. There's a lot of crowd noise. You know, it was a home team game. So I think that's definitely a situation, again, where there are some techniques that you can use in terms of physical and mental training to have yourself more prepared for that. And in some ways, you know, I'm not going to suggest anything for that specific situation as much as when you find yourself drinking from the fire hose, it means that you're taking in information that you don't need to be taking in. And if you can, we can just pop to that next graph for a moment.
Sure.
It kind of shows a little bit.
Yeah. Oops. There.
All right. So I promise I won't spend much time on a graph because really, who cares? But if you take the things that look like a sideways funnel and you understand that that is our attentional field, that's how much we can pay attention to, right? And then the bottom, the axis there is our arousal level. Quit it, Craig, quit it. Our arousal level is our attention level. And that's where our energy is at. We're going to talk about how to manage your arousal level in a minute. So as your arousal level raises, so as your energy comes up, your ability to pay attention to stuff typically narrows down. Right? And so you see that gray bar in the middle, that is optimal performance. That's where you want to be, where you're taking in absolutely as much relevant cue material and you're gating out as much irrelevant material as possible. Right? We know that those X's and O's are never going to be perfect, but it's that ideal field, and that's where you want to be.
Okay.
And everybody's different. That's why we call it an individualized zone, the IZOF. Yeah,
right.
We love our acronym.
So
we're going to get into the IZOF.
There we go.
What's an IZOF? What's an IZOF and how do I find mine? It's the individual zone of optimal functioning. It's where you want to be when you're performing at your highest. Right? So imagine if you come into a match and you're energetically at 2 minutes to the end of the match before the match starts. You are not in the right zone. Right? Before the match starts, you're doing a warm-up, you're talking with your partner, the before times you were meeting the captains and doing all of those things. That's not when you want your arousal level super high. You want to be able to adjust your arousal levels according to the match. Thanks, Meg. If you email me or contact me, I can send it to you. But if anyone asks me what a sports psychologist does, my job is to help you train your mind to be where you need to be when you need to be there. It's that idea of peak performance. You don't want to peak too soon. You don't want to peak too late. You want to be right in that perfect moment where you're at your best when you need to be at your best. And so everybody's different. And that's the fun thing about sports psychology, is that just like a training regimen, a physical training regimen doesn't work the same way for every athlete. A mental training regimen has to be individualized.
Right.
And so everybody here should be able to think about how you feel going into a match, how you feel going into a tense situation. I tend to get quiet and sort of shut down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to bring my energy level up in tense situations.
Yep.
And then I wound up overcompensating and I got too much.
Right.
And some people, they're super jittery and they're this kind of person,
Mm-hmm.
and they need to figure out how to bring their arousal level down to meet the moment.
Yeah. I'd be really interested to hear from people who are watching what they feel they are. Because I know when you were saying that you tend to get a little closed in on yourself, and you get very sort of narrow and quiet. And that was a problem for me throughout most of my career, because the pressure just kind of came down, and I needed to learn how to be more expansive at the beginning, like before a match had started, and be able to relax and joke around with all kinds of people and notice little things that I could joke around about. And so that meant I was expanding my attention and getting it outside of myself. And that's how I was able to relax. So I really resonate with that. So hopefully people chime in and sort of let us know. Here's Gideon. Crazy that my 16-year-old learns about arousal theory and techniques in academic PE at school, and we never talk about it as a third team until now. Absolutely. Like Whit said, we are falling behind on this, but not anymore. Darn it. We're here.
Not anymore. I am here for you. So yeah, I think, and this is one of the things that I find fairly common among to come back to an earlier question about umpires and goalkeepers.
Mm-hmm.
Most successful goalkeepers I know tend to be pretty even-keeled. Not all the time, but on the pitch. You don't get real far as one of the helmet-throwing, screaming, yelling goalkeepers. And there's a certain level of evenness and calm under that high pressure that I think carries over, and you see a lot in umpires where so many goalkeepers become umpires or are at the same time, we tend to shut down a lot. And one of the things that I tend to try and do is bring people up and out, because the pressure is the pressure. You can either perform or not. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot change the pressure of the situation. You can change your own behavior. So it's like you can't change whether it's raining or not. You can just show up and do your job.
Yep.
So let's pop to my next and favorite graphic.
Okay.
Unless there's any particular questions out there.
Your graphs are big hits, so there we go. Somebody actually just put in the chat their email address saying send it to me. So I just put in the comments for everybody that we're going to put your contact info up at the end. So if there's any materials that you would find beneficial, Whit will absolutely help you out with that. So we'll get to that at the end.
For sure. So this is Nideffer's model of attentional focus. It's pretty commonly used in the sports psych world, and I wanted to apply it here to officiating. And you can see it's just an XY graph. It's not all that complicated, but it's your attentional focus. You have on one end a broad focus, on another end a narrow focus. You have an external, and then when we're talking about external, that's external to you, and internal, meaning internal to you. And in this lower right-hand quadrant, this internal narrow focus, we're not going to spend a lot of time on that one in terms of umpiring, because that's something that unless you're injured or you're dealing with an injury, you want to sort of in some ways dispense with before a match. That is why physical training is so important, and why getting a good warm-up is so important.
Yep.
so that you don't have to spend any time focusing on, can I keep up with this match? I'm dehydrated, I'm hungry, my head hurts, my
Yep.
whatever.
Yep.
You, in an ideal world, you're able to navigate all of that pre-match
Yep.
and in your break and in the interval where you get good hydration. So
and that's a really good point, and something I just want to, from an umpire manager perspective, this is why UMs ask umpires to feed back to them if there's anything at all that's bothering them. If they've got a little niggle, something, something's happened at home, something that is pulling their focus into that area of the axes, because as you said, that's something that it isn't beneficial to umpiring whatsoever. And if something's pulling you into that, it's a very dangerous space to be in, and it takes some real skill and often is just something that you don't want to try to mess with as you're going into a game. So this is why we want to pay attention, not because we want to punish you because you're not in full fit form. We want to give you the opportunity for you to get into the right part of this matrix so that you can do the best job you can. And then, when the time is right, work on how to deal with that injury and maybe get you to the point where you could, wiggle your way through, perhaps, but not optimally, right? Does that sound like a fair reflection of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's absolutely a fair reflection. Okay. I was talking about the physical effects, but there's also emotional effects. I will say, people were asking me, why have I continued to umpire through a doctoral program? And because for me, umpiring is an hour or 2 hour gift where I can't do anything but focus on this match.
Yeah.
It is like this amazing gift of quiet in my head. And as long as, I'm physically fit enough to manage the game, a quiet in my body that I don't get in the rest of my academic and professional world, where I'm dealing with people's complex trauma, and everybody has their lives outside of the match. And whatever you bring into the match, the best, that best feeling is when you set it aside and you're 60 minutes, 90 minutes of just here.
Yeah.
And, for me, that's my why of why I continue to umpire. And, I can do a whole nother presentation on what's your why.
Yeah.
Why do you do this? Because if anybody does it for the money, that's dumb. But yeah, anyhow,
that's not a thing.
So, right.
We all know that's not a thing.
So setting aside the narrow internal stuff, and it's something that you want to be a little bit aware of, but we are not marathon runners. Marathon runners are almost entirely narrow internal focus the whole time, because it's because marathon runners are a breed apart.
Right.
So then let's talk about a little bit of each of these. And then one of the things that I want to touch on before we really dive into any of the quadrants is that the best training in a mental skills realm is an ability to recognize where your focus needs to be and shift in between those things. In any given match, you really are going to be in all 4 quadrants, mostly in all 3 quadrants at any given moment. And so the highest performers are those who can recognize where they need to be and be there in that moment. So an internal broad focus is really sort of the strategy of the game. It's, again, some of the pieces of what's going to be the next point of conflict. Where is the space? Who's moving into the spaces? Those sorts of strategic things. It's also a lot of places where you're thinking about how to communicate with your umpire partner, whether you have radios or not. Even if we have radios, am I putting my hands up and saying, play on? I'm communicating. Those are all sort of broad internal messages where you train that the single word response to an umpire partner. If somebody's asking me help, I'm not going to say, oh, that ball hit a foot of the green player on your right-hand side, because that's not a helpful response. If my partner says help, I'm going to say corner. Right? That is a broad internal training mode where I have trained my mind to recognize what does help need. And, I put in a pre-match conversation here as well, because that's going to be something where, unless you've worked with this person a really long time, you get the message of like, how do you want me to handle your offside on a corner? How do we want to handle aerial balls? All of those things you need to have trained yourself so that whatever that person says, you can incorporate into your head and execute in a match.
Okay.
So there's your broad internal.
Okay.
Broad external is almost the exact opposite, where you're looking at the whole pitch. Right? You're taking in, yes, there's a play here in front of me, and also what's going on in the entire environment. Is there crowd noise? Is there crap blowing in from the side where there might be things moving around out there? How am I managing the game? How are my partner and I managing the game?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to address something with the captain, or maybe that left back, right? Is it time for a little bit of an icebreaker or a joke? Is this a good moment for a joke with the player, or is it going to be like a fart in an elevator, right? That's your broad external. And then the narrow external, and I tried to pick pictures of mostly people that I know and friends and whatnot. But this narrow external focus is really when you're navigating a few players or a small situation, where you're bringing it down to a much more close-in environment. And at the same time, you still need to have that broad external focus out there just a little bit in the back of your head. I'm setting up a play. I've moved this player back 5 meters, and we're not going to start because I have a player down, right? So you switch between this narrow to a broad, and then, okay, player's off and safe, my partner's good, back to the narrow, back to the setup. All of those sorts of things. Like, and if you think about management of a PC, is going to be a fantastic opportunity to move between, really, in fact, all 4 of these quadrants.
Right.
It's a great moment to, like, they're setting up, I'm going to take a second to, adjust my neck a little bit. Cool. I've regulated my breathing. I've checked with my partner. We're all good. Clock is stopped. I have that quiet, right? So you kind of move all between all 4.
Yeah.
So I spend a lot of time with this particular notion when I'm working with umpires and officials, because we have to switch so much, so quickly, and to really identify what those situations are.
Okay. So you're saying that you have very specific exercises that, and I'm sure you don't have time to go into it now, but that help us shift through all of those things effectively and recognize when we need to make those shifts into those different quadrants.
Yes.
Is that what I've got? Okay. Awesome.
That's a lot of what I just said, except you made it a lot less words.
It's my job. I'm going to take it back a little bit, because Professor Gideon's got a question here that I thought was interesting about the arousal roles. And how much of a role is there for the 2 umpires to be at different places on the graphs to optimize the narrow and broad views? And how do you train that between the 2 people? So yeah, let's start with what happens when 2 umpires are at different arousal states. Is that a problem, or is that cool?
It would be weird if you weren't.
Okay, I agree, but tell me more.
No, it's not a problem. Move on. No. No, it's really common, because if you think about it, first of all, everybody comes in and is a different human being. And like I said, if I'm working with somebody who's pretty high strung and I come in, we start off here, right? And then maybe throughout a match we're shifting spots a little bit, but ultimately, if play is in my end, my arousal level is going to be different from my partner's.
Right.
And then as we shift, if we're midfield, maybe we're in similar levels.
Yeah.
Right? Perhaps I have all the crowd noise on my side, and so I'm working harder at gating out irrelevant information because, nobody knows how to spot a foot like a fan, and I need to gate that out.
Right.
None of that needs to come into my universe, right? Whereas perhaps my partner actually needs relevant information from the sideline.
Okay.
Whether they're working with a technical umpire, a judge, or something like that, or who knows?
Okay.
There's different points where I'm gating in, they're gating out. My focus needs to come up, their focus needs to come down.
Right. I get it. So it might be that if you're the controlling umpire and the ball's in your circle, you may have a more narrow external focus. Is that right? And then your partner, as the supporting umpire, could have a broader external focus in that moment because they're trying to take in anything that you're not, that shouldn't be a high priority for you as the controlling umpire to take in. Do I have that right?
That's spot on.
Oh, love
spot
it.
On.
I understand. This is very exciting. Okay.
And ideally, you've worked together before.
Right.
Right.
Well,
we all know how great it is when you have somebody who you umpire with regularly, that you know each other's language, you know each other's tendencies.
yeah.
I have an umpire partner who will just talk incessantly. I'm not going to name names, Garrett Best. And
So
he's
mean.
learned. I am. He's also my best friend, so I can. But, I'll just say, shut up, Garrett.
He's very
And
chatty.
he'll just stop talking.
Yeah.
Right. And he has gotten so much better over the past decade of talking less.
Yes.
In fact, he just came back from a match this weekend where he said, I didn't talk. It was brilliant.
So what you're saying is that that the two of you working together, not only will you have different attentional focus areas, you'll have different arousal levels, but you also have a role to play in how your colleagues' attentional focus or arousal level is, and understanding what they need you can help with their performance as well by giving them what they need from you.
Brilliant partner that you're like, you get off that pitch and you're like, I've never had such a great game, and it was because of you.
Yeah.
Because you were right where I needed you to be when I needed you to be there.
Yeah.
And that's like that is when we get the personal level to that next level.
Right.
Where you can then show up for your partner in a way that is helpful for them and helpful for the match.
Yeah. And you're saying that's not just about being in the right position or making the right decision. It's about all these other things that you're doing, the way that you're communicating and the amount that you're communicating and things like that. That is really cool. I love that.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see.
Where do we go next?
I don't know where. Oh, we go to the squiggly guy. The Yip Guy. Okay.
Yeah, the Yips.
All right.
So, we talked a bunch of theory and a little bit of practical application. I can't wait to see what clip you've brought up for us to look at.
Okay, well, the only reason I pulled this one out was because when Dan was when he was on Umpire at Home a couple weeks ago, he actually said, Keely, you got to pull this. We didn't manage to get to it in the in that respect. Because we were talking about just the nature of the aerial decision, and we didn't have time to get to the rest of it. But I'll show the clip and we'll go through why it is.
This is a brilliant clip. I know which one this is.
Yeah, exactly. Because you were interested in sort of the drama. Now, why is this one? I don't think there's any sound. And that will ruin it. Okay, hang on. I'm gonna Okay, I'm going to do this. And I'm going to play. See, I have backups. There we go.
Running out of time.
Now we've got the sound.
It's spread to this far side by Brad. What a touch that is from Ockenden. The crowd are on their feet in the Kalinga Stadium. They're urging Australia forward. It's gone in! It's gone in! With 27 seconds left. It's gone in. They're going upstairs to challenge it. Can you believe it? What a finish!
Well, there didn't look to be anything wrong. I think the Dutch are appealing because they can, not because they think there was anything wrong with it.
I think it's come off a Dutch stick. Ockenden played it in. We're going to go upstairs. It's bedlam inside the Kalinga. Let's listen in.
Go ahead. Can you just check there's no reason I should award the goal?
No
Okay,
reason.
I'll have a look at the...
No reason he should award it.
Thank you.
Surely.
Oh, that's the part that he just couldn't get over.
Goal, yes or no, is essentially.
There's Ockenden's ball to Beale. Beale feeds it in. There's an Australian stick on it from Ockenden. It's a goal. No doubt.
Off Sherman, would you believe?
So just to translate all the things that are happening here, of course, I think everybody knows the situation that happened around this goal, and that this is the semi-final at the World Cup, and Australia needed this goal to tie it, to go into a, well, with 20 seconds to go, into a shootout. And just keep in mind that you can't teams can't refer anything that leads to a goal, a stroke, or corner if that incident happens outside the attacking 23. So what the Dutch really wanted to talk about was the aerial back in the opposite end of the field, and they couldn't. But the emotion of this moment and things like that, Dan does what he needs to do.
For you, it is goal.
And there we go. So big emotional moment, and then the words that come out of Dan's mouth don't express what he actually wanted to say. And it was sort of a reflex, like, okay, I'm just going to do something to make sure that this doesn't get messed up. So how does this tie into what you wanted to talk about now, about all the things?
So backstory here, I asked Keely to put in a clip of something that is a big moment in a game, right? Because we talk so often about mistakes, and a reset doesn't necessarily need to happen after just a mistake has been made. It's, did something go wrong? I mean, I think, again, I don't know Dan well enough to know exactly what was going on in his head, but it's something like, holy crap, that was a whole lot. I ran flat out. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. Look at this moment. There's 22 seconds left in the match. I want to make sure that I did it right. And I have the opportunity to do that using a self-referral, right? And so, sure, there was a little bit of word salad coming out of his mouth, but he got his point across, which was, did I do right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And he got most of the words that we're told to use in a video referral out there. Check to see if there's any reason I shouldn't award this goal. And, you know, ultimately, sure, we can talk about that aerial till we're blue in the face, but there was no call in the moment. Whatever you think is whatever you think. But his attentional focus was probably all over the place in that moment. But he knew that he had the ability to make the referral, ask for advice. Because if he hadn't, I mean, ultimately it turns out that he made the correct decision in the moment. But what if he hadn't? Right? That is a hinging point in a match.
Yep.
And he had the presence of mind, and you see it immediately. Goal, it's mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm right now. I'm calling for the referral.
Yep.
He didn't even need the Dutch player to talk to him. He knew it.
Yep.
And that's a case of training. His mind, his body was where he needed to be, and his mind was where he needed to be. So What do you do after that? How do you go back to another 22 seconds of match and then shootout?
Yes.
Right? That is so much. So right now we're just going to talk about two techniques. Anybody who's worked with me before, you're going to recognize this. It's a really standard, depending on the field that you come from, it can be considered box breathing, tactical breathing. I call it zombie breathing. And I'm not going to get into a ton of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system activation that's going on here. But the idea is that, have you ever gotten to home or gotten to work and you have no memory of how you got there?
Yes.
Right? But nobody honked their horns at you. There were no accidents. You didn't get pulled over and got a ticket. I mean, maybe, but okay. What happened was you were driving with automaticity. And what we try and get to in an umpiring situation is the same thing. You put your hand up and you're blowing your whistle before your brain has even made the cognitive leap of, I just saw a foul on the player in the dark uniform.
Right.
Right? You're here blowing or holding before your brain has caught up. And that's automaticity. You're functioning like a zombie, and that's a good place to be. So the idea here is that in any situation, you can box breathe. You go in for it. You can do it in different ways, but you can start with a 4 count. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, and rest for 4. And it's just a very simple, easy cadence: in, hold, out, rest. And that's great for like mindful meditation practice when you're sitting in your chair or you're about to start your workout or anything like that. Not so much on the pitch. On the pitch, we're going to use this tool in a different way. And I talked about myself being low activation. Mm-hmm. I tend to be low activation.
Right.
So I focus on the in-breath, because the in-breath tells our parasympathetic nervous system it's time to kick in.
Right.
Time to bring up. So I'm going to focus on the in, and I'm going to do a harder in through my nose and an easier out. Somebody who needs to bring their arousal level down is going to do the exact opposite. They're going to do an easy in and a more forceful out, because that tells the sympathetic nervous system, chill, I got this. And there's literally a nerve, it's called the vagal nerve, or the vagus system. It runs from back here in your brain down all the way past all your guts to your diaphragm, right? And so when we talk about diaphragmatic breathing,
right?
When we talk about, it's mindful breathing and Buddhist Zen meditations and all of those things don't focus on the breath just because it feels good. Yeah. It feels good because we're soothing our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. We're soothing our nervous system and saying, everything's okay. Everything's okay. There is no threat. And we can use this tool to navigate our arousal, be where we need to be. So like right before we had this, before we started the session, I was doing a little bit of focus on the out breath because I hate this kind of stuff.
I never would have guessed that, but I guess it worked.
Yeah. So like you can do this as a team, you can do this in your head, and then you find yourself in the present moment. When you do this breath work, you're able to more focus on the present moment. And this is something that I work with my individual clients with, of having a quicker reset. We'll go to the next slide if you don't mind.
Sure.
Thanks. Okay. I just love this graphic. Who wouldn't want that button right now? I would be smashing it. So last thing, in terms of like specific technique, you have to recognize that you've lost the plot. or recognize that you're in a situation where you're likely to lose the plot, right? Do you tend to get wound up when there's physical conflict on the pitch? Do you tend to get anxious when you have a partner who presents in a specific way? Do you get worried when it's really hot out or cold out or wet? Or what are your conditions where you're going to lose focus? Because you have to know when you're going to lose focus.
Right.
And it's best if you know in advance. So let's say you recognize, oh, this is a place where I've already lost it. I have lost the plot, gang. Then we build in tools to allow you to regroup and refocus. Sometimes it's breath work. Sometimes it's a cue word like me and my shoulders. Sometimes it's there was a fantastic National Hockey League, ice hockey league goalkeeper named Braden Holtby, who worked with a sports psychologist. And you would see after a goal was scored on him, he would grab his water bottle, have a drink, and then he would shake the water bottle, and he would focus on one drop of water as it went up in the air, and he would watch it go all the way back to the ground. And that was his refocus. He had trained his mind to refocus and reset with that water, with the single drop of water.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because I've always wondered, because you watch goalkeepers at the top levels, they all have a reset routine. You know, they don't just. It's too. There's too much of a pattern to it for it to be random. So, but I always thought, okay, are they just associating a behavior with something? But what you're saying is that the action gives them an opportunity to realign their arousal level or whatever their focus needs to be on something else, like that drop of water falling to the ice. That is really, really cool.
Yep, and that's something that you have to train, just like a physical skill.
Yeah.
As many penalty strokes as you defend is as many times as you have to train your mind to let go of a goal.
Yep. Wow.
Because you can sit there and ruminate on, yeah, I totally just messed that up, but what's that going to do for the next moment?
Yeah.
So yeah,
absolutely.
There you go.
I know I went through a phase in my career. I think I was probably about 5 or 6 years into my international career, and I was always pretty as scatterbrained is a negative way of saying it, but I definitely had a broad focus at inopportune times on the pitch, where I was thinking about, what I was going to have for dinner, or what that person over there was wearing, or, taking in information I definitely didn't need to. I was firehosing it. And when I recognized I had a problem, I developed, I tried just randomly to this physical pattern of movement. I'd seen people talking about snapping elastics and things like that, and that physical sensation helping to bring their focus in very small again. And I didn't want to wear an elastic band, so I would snap my fingers and I would pat my own leg, and that for me helped me do that. And not only did it bring me in when I noticed I was thinking about what I wanted to have for dinner, but also if I had made a mistake with a call and I needed to get myself back into the present moment. And because I've talked a lot of times with, on these broadcasts about how we cannot be in the past. We cannot talk about the decisions we made in the past. We can't think about them. We need to be future focused so that our present we time our present decisions properly. So I used that as a way to boom. And then I was thinking about the future again. Because the next thing I always did was, okay, now I'm small. What is happening right around me? What do I need to plan? And then I could get broader again. But I had to bring it in really tight and then broaden it out again. Does that make sense? Was I doing that right?
Did it work for you?
Yeah, it did work for me.
Then you were doing it right.
Yay. So
there's no right or wrong to this.
Yeah, but my interest in this is especially because I want to help other umpires do this as a UM, because so many people, it's very easy to see an umpire who's lost their focus or who's dwelling on their past mistake. It's a lot harder to give them a specific tactic or technique that they can use to get over that hump. And so I'm really interested in these things. And I know everybody that is listening, they know they're interested in that stuff too. That's why they They clue in. This is awesome. Rachel's saying, I always try to focus, keep my focus on the next decision. And, Barry is using the word of the day, automaticity. We should have made it like a Pee Wee Herman word of the day, that as soon as you said it, like everybody would like scream.
Automaticity.
Also known as old age. He's hilarious. There you go. Snapping elastics. So Anik, I've seen that as a technique that just, if you have an elastic around your wrist and you could snap it and you might get the auditory signal, but you get this little physical, it's not like a punishment, but it's just a sharp sensation that disrupts whatever the pattern of your thinking is and interrupts that loop of you thinking about that old decision and thinking about that old decision and thinking, and for me, my thoughts get very obsessive and circular. So I really liked that sensation because it interrupted me. And then I was like, I know what I need now. I know what I need now. I can focus on that. So I had to just break the pattern.
So you built for yourself what we call a cue word or a cue action. The snap of your wrist was a reset for you.
Yep.
For me, I have a couple of different resets depending on the situation. The thing is you want it to be something that's always accessible to you and is not terribly demonstrative, because we don't want to bring attention to the fact that we just pooped the bed, or whatever. You want to allow yourself to be unobtrusive, which is like why I love having my shoulders cue, because I just say it in my head of like, where's your shoulders? Oh, a little relaxed. Okay, back. I keep my whistle on a carabiner, because if I don't attach it to my waistband, my belt loops, I'll lose it. If it's not attached to me, I'll lose it. And I will, if I find myself a little jittery, I'll snap the carabiner just a couple of times in my fingers. 1, 2, 3. And it's just a real quick little reset. The thing that we want to stay away from is rituals, because a ritual is something that pulls you away. As you notice, what we've noticed in sports psych is that when players are in a slump, they bring in new rituals. Like if I twist my wristband and touch my head, and I am not going to criticize Rafa Nadal because what he does works for him. But in a different athlete, all of his touching and the physical movements that he does would be something that we would try and move away from.
Yeah.
Because we see that the further away an athlete gets from peak performance, the more often they'll add another ritual because it worked once.
Right. Absolutely.
So we want to stay away from ritual and have more of a reset.
Yeah.
Moving away from, I have to have, like when I work with kids, younger athletes, I have to have my teddy bear.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, well, maybe you don't have your teddy bear with you, because if you lose the teddy bear on the bus, you're going to come unglued.
Yes.
So what do we do instead? All right, let's associate the teddy bear with the playing of the anthem and putting your hand over your heart. So when you put your hand over your heart, you're squeezing your teddy bear.
Yeah.
Because your hand and your chest are going to be with you in a match.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. So what I'm taking from what you're saying is that rituals can be dangerous because you don't always have control over whether your ritual accessories are available to you. Like as an umpire, you might not have time to do a big, touch, adjust, put on a jacket, do a bunch of things, because you have to move on to the next decision. So it has to be, your refocus trigger has to be so quick and immediate and accessible that you don't need equipment. And that's one of the reasons I didn't want a rubber band, because that was just one more thing that I could forget. But I always had my fingers. I always had my fingers.
Right.
So I could always snap my fingers.
Right. And then the second piece of it is, if we think of it in terms of a reset, great. If you think of it in terms of something that you absolutely have to have, or you're not going to be able to do this next thing, not so great.
Yeah, absolutely. Simon's asking, I don't know, Whit, if this is anything that you've seen much of, but Simon, I didn't cue this up. I know that it's something that a lot of people have talked about and analyzed, but Maddie Hinch in the shootout, England, stop trying to make this happen, okay? Angry eyes for a moment. They're not shuffles, they're shootouts. Stop it. Sorry. Now we're back to the Olympic shootouts. And did you see anything of or have you ever seen anything of that? And Maddie had a very specific sort of thing, and she also had cheat sheet notes all ready for every player that she expected she was going to match up with in the shootout and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Does it work for Maddie Hinch? Yes, it does.
It sure did that day. Yeah.
Didn't it though?
Yeah.
I think, like, particularly the cheat sheets, that's just brilliant tactical training.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. You want to know, from a goalkeeper's perspective, yes, she knew what the tendencies are of all of the opponents, and that's for her. In terms of like the physical setup that she has, the thing about a shootout is that she has that time. Yeah. She always has that time. She will always have that time. And so having something to center her in that space is great. If she has to do that in live play, not so great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So situationally specific, brilliant tactical move, brilliant mental training move for her, gets her where her head needs to be, maybe intimidates the opposition a little bit, but isn't an intimidating action.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect training.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. I remember my new boss, Andrew Wilson, was talking about how they developed a very set way of approaching the shootouts with Spain. And so they knew exactly how long before the shootouts were going to start that they would gather up, and when they would, and who would say what, where would they stand. They had everything mapped out because it's a very controlled situation. So they're like, well, if it's a controlled situation, we have these variables presented to us, and now we can associate the mental state that we want to be in, the preparation we want to take, with our success in these next moments, which, again, I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah. So let's bring it back to umpiring.
Yeah.
What opportunities do we have as umpires to do that? What are the moments? There's like 4. Mm-hmm. Start of the match.
Yeah.
After a goal is scored, so you restart the match. Positioning on a penalty corner. Positioning on a shootout. Positioning on a stroke.
Yeah.
Those are all moments when we have the control of the timing and the situation. So that, like, I know that one thing that my UMs have hammered on is don't release a penalty corner and then start moving. Be where you want to be for the penalty corner and then release it. If you find yourself having to move right after you blow that whistle, why?
Yeah.
So again, those are the moments where, like the team has before shootouts, before, they have their batteries and their setups for penalty corners and defense. We have the same opportunity.
Yeah.
Take those moments to reset.
Yeah, absolutely. Little side discussion going on about Maddie Hinch's tricks and things like that. But I mean, I would say that, especially at that point, Simon, I don't think the opposition really knew what she was doing. And a lot of it was just, it was for her and it was working for her. So there you go. I'm popping back into the presentation to make sure we're at I think we're
done.
We are done. Yep.
But just my references.
Exactly. So I wanted to make sure that we put this up on the screen so everybody could see. So this is an invitation to contact Whit. Make sure to go to him with any questions that you have, or if you forget this information or you haven't written it down, screenshot it. Come on, y'all know how to screenshot. Do that. But you can get in touch with me and I will get you in touch with Whit, and you can talk more about all the things that we talked about today and any further investigations and questions that you have. If you want to dive more into the world of sports psych in umpiring training, I don't think there's many people who are better equipped to help you out than somebody who's not only, been a long time, very successful career umpire, but somebody who's been studying the crap out of it for the last while and is going to continue to for the next, what do you have, a year and a half in your doctorate? Is that how that goes?
I finished my academics in July, and then I have my year-long internship in Boston that starts in September.
Yeah.
I'll be there. And then actually in August 2022, I will be making everybody call me Dr. Ryan for 2 weeks, just 2 weeks. Then I'll go back to normal. Yeah, so August 2022.
Should I be telling everybody to call me Manager Keeley right now for 2 weeks? Is that what I should be doing? Something like that? I don't think it has the same cachet somehow. It's missing just a little bit of prestige somehow. I don't know where that is. If anybody has any other questions for Whit, well, we still have them.
My match got canceled. I just rescheduled a trip to the gym. So that's all I have today. Yeah. I'm happy to stick around and answer questions if anybody wants.
There you go. Okay, so Simon Parsons, I will pass on his email directly to you, Whit, so that you can get in contact with him to make sure that he gets the graph. Let's see. I saved this one. Hi, Ryan. He got the day off school, so he could watch. Ryan's down in the Southern Hemisphere, so yeah, we all had the day off school. Isn't it great? There you go. Ian was asking early in the broadcast, and I didn't want to distract, about the Clubhouse sessions. Are you on Clubhouse, Whit?
No.
Do you have an iPhone?
No.
Do you have an iPad?
My partner does.
Okay. Well, something to think about. Yeah. So it's still, the app is still in beta, but Clubhouse is amazing. It's just kind of like a combination of a live talk radio with podcasting, but it's not recorded, and it's and like conferences. It's amazing. This
sounds like short attention span theater for me. I am in.
You're in. Oh, it is so addictive, and I have learned so much over the last little while. But we do have a World Field Hockey Club that's going, and what we did during the Ireland GB games, I teamed up with some coaches. They allowed me to hijack and come in when they were we did a clubhouse room and broadcast during the matches and talked, gave kind of an alternative commentary on what we were noticing for the crowd. And then we did it on Zoom and things like that. So it's a really powerful tool. And I think there's
we need that here in the US for our hockey matches, because the commentators are usually ice hockey folks.
Yes.
And
they're terrible.
Well,
yes.
They're great at ice hockey commentation.
Yeah, that's commentary. True. Yeah, it's not so good. But if you're looking for something else, if you want that coaching analysis, if you want, for me, because I do the weekend watch parties all the time where we watch a game together and we're going through the umpiring analysis of things. So it helps frame the way you're watching the game very differently and can really hone in. And then you just have these great discussions. So it's a really powerful tool. And yeah, it was really fun, Ian. And I'm looking forward to doing both of those. More of those.
Oh, good. I started mishing words together, and now it's on you.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Your Majesty.
Your Majesty. There you go.
Simon, you're in trouble. Don't you dare. There you go. Simon Dye, Whit, and Keeley, my 18-year-old daughter, would definitely want to watch this. Excellent. That's why we have replays. Kat, please join Clubhouse. So if you need a Clubhouse invite because you have an iOS device, hit me up. I have 9 invites right now, and I need to get rid of them.
Give me one.
Yeah. Okay. I'll shoot you one, and and use your partner's iPad, and we'll get on that.
He loves it when I borrow his stuff.
Yeah, I bet. Rachel, thanks, Whit. Keeley. We were missing somebody from the live stream. You promised me he'd show up.
Okay, let me see if I can get him. And then
Is he awake?
We forgot. Probably not. He's a 100-pound dog. We forgot to talk about motor neurons. So.
You can't just say that and then get up.
I can too, because I just did.
Yeah, you can. You can definitely do that. Harmut, thanks. It was amazing. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Harmut, it's great to have you. And yeah, this was very different, but I think really, really valuable. And I learned a ton as well, which is actually the very selfish reason why I do all these things. Where is he? There he is. Oh, why does he have a jacket on? He's got a sweater.
Because he hates the cold. He's a big baby.
Introduce him to the fans.
I'm going to try. He's camera shy. Hi. Come here. Oh, he found a treat behind. Oh, no. He found a ball of aluminum foil.
Oh, that's even better. Oh, he's so gorgeous. Oh, look at that face. Look at that face. Oh.
There we go.
Look, everybody, I heard on the internet that dogs are very popular. So I decided to bring in a dog. Oh, he's beautiful. Jane, you're very welcome. I'm glad you were able to tune in. So I think we're good and we're ready to go. Thank you for the guest star appearance, but thank you so much for everything that you brought in. It was a ton of knowledge, and I know it's just scratching the surface of everything you do and everything you can bring. So please don't hesitate, everybody, to reach out to Whit for more.
I will put a plug. This is one of the things that I do professionally. I love doing it. I work. Most of my day-to-day work is really heavy clinical stuff with complex trauma and a lot of heavy therapy. And so when I have the opportunity to work with athletes and performers, particularly umpires and referees across sport, it's like the best thing that happens in my week. So I love it. Bring it. I'm happy to consult. Keely and I have been talking about doing some sort of a advanced workshop-y thing where people bring in clips and we talk. I mean, there's lots of things that are possible once I'm done with this doctorate.
It's a bit of a time suck. I'm not super happy about it because it means that you're not posting as much on social media.
And I took Facebook off of my phone.
Oh, you did? Oh.
I did, because I'm really over it.
Oh, I know. It makes sense. But you have not only in reaching out to your emotional support Canadians, you've been very supportive for the rest of us too, because you're very kind and very open and warm. And these are the things that we've needed a lot of over the last few years, and we continue to need as we're getting through this pandemic stuff. So there you go. Just lots of thanks coming in. Alan saying many thanks. Very interesting. Gary, now my head hurts.
I get that sometimes. I'm sorry.
Yes, I know. It's a thing. And Gideon, thanks, prestigious manager. And Dr. To Be. That's what we're going to call you, Dr. To Be. Great session.
Oh.
So thanks again. And everybody, please bring your feedback. I can't wait. Next week, I'm not sure what I'm doing. I might be back to just a What Up Wednesday where I rant about things as per usual. But we will see what happens. If you have ideas for things that you want to talk about, folks at home, you see something on social media, you have an idea, anything like that, please bring it on, because I want to help and answer the questions that you want answers to. So thanks, everybody, for joining Umpire at Home. It was awesome. And we'll see you in a week. Thanks, Whit.
Thanks.